Hello and welcome to this new episode in which we are going to work on the create component, details of a component, edit component, and delete component. We are going probably to have multiple episodes for these operations. So we're going to start first with the create component. And to do so, we just need to go to our create component, or our create company component, and then introduce the form there. So now we are at the create company component. So we are just going to start with the constructor, and constructor we're going to import our services and our classes that are going to be used in our, let's say, component. So we are going to declare first a form property, and that is form control or form group, and that's going to host the main company data form. So we're going to create a method called initForm, and that method will take care of initializing the structure of our company. So we just need to start by instantiating a new form group, and that form group will take the attributes of my company. So the main attribute is the name, and that's a form control, and within that form control we can decide whether if it's required or not. By default is empty, and then we can decide to make it required by calling this validator flag or validators required flag. But before we do that, we need to introduce some modules or import some modules into our company's module. So the first one is reactive forms module, and of course some of the other Angular material components like the input and the date picker and so on. So let's go back to our form and continue constructing the form. So the name, and then we need the address, and the address is actually a subform that we have to create. And we have the contact, which is a subform array. So the address is simply another subform. So we're going to create a new form group, and then that form group will have some attributes that are relative to the address. So we can always navigate to the address module or address model. So we didn't create it yet, but we know that we can see it here. So I'm going to open that address model, which is this one here. And this is my model, so we have all these information. I can go ahead and copy them one by one. So we start with the street number. This is the street number, which is a new form control. It's a number or a string, so we don't care. Then we'll have street name. Of course, these two are like required. Then we have the address line 2 in case it's applicable. This is an optional attribute, so we can just say not required, just remove this and it will become not required. Then we have the city, the state, the country, and that's it. So the city will be required. So we have to change this to city, country, and I believe we are missing the postal code that we have to introduce in our entity, which is not there yet, so we can introduce it later. So now our address subform is ready. We can go to the other subform, which is the contact. So the contact is not mandatory, but a company should have at least one contact. So we have to create some contacts. Since the company have a list of contacts, so if you go to the model of the company, we can check that we have a collection. So we need to have a subform array or a form array that is attached to my form group. And to do that, you just say contacts, since it's a collection, new form array. And within each form array, you will have a new form group to represent the contact entity. And to do that, we are going to create another function that gives us back contact whenever we need to. So we are going to call create contact form, and this will return a form group for me. And we're going to create return new form group, and we introduce the attribute of our contact. To do that, we just head over to the contact model, and we can see we have first name, last name, email, phone. And that's it. Those are the attributes that you can edit or you can add. So first name, which is a form array, which is a required field there. So we need to introduce this here. Same thing for the last name. Just make sure that you have copied the same attribute names from here. You have the middle name, it's optional, and you have the email and the phone. So I will have the middle name, but it's not mandatory, so I have to remove the required attribute from here, so it's optional. Then we have the email and the phone. Notice now that we have our form will represent the company, and within the company, if we go to the model here, so within the company you have one address and you have multiple contacts, and that's why we have introduced the subform as a simple form for, or simple form group for the address, and for the contacts we will have multiple contacts, and we can always call this function to introduce a contact form. So this is going to be my first contact should be there before I can proceed, and I will introduce a button to add multiple contacts if the user needs to, but at least we'll have one contact at a time. So now my form is ready. We just need to call that within my constructor, this init form. Now we're going to create the form in the HTML template and see how we can introduce each attribute individually using the material components or Angular material components. So here I'm going to say h2 create company, and we're going to introduce a form. So div class p2. So this is going to wrap everything out for me. I'll put this here inside. Just remove this. I'm going to start the form, and that's going to be form group is to take the form that I have there, and when I submit, I would like to call onSubmit, and we're going to declare this method here. So my onSubmit will appear here. Just need to copy it to the bottom of the class, and of course we need to validate. So before we submit, so we make sure that the form is valid. This form is valid. Post the form data to the .NET Core API once it's valid. Else we can always warn the user about the missing fields. That's it. So we can say alert here. Please fill all required fields. That's it. So that's that for the form, and now we are going to introduce the first thing is the buttons to submit. So mod raised button, and then the color will be blue, and say submit. Its type is submit. Then we have the console, which resets the everything for me. So I would say reset console, and this is primary, actually not blue. It's from Angular material, and this is going to be the default. Now if I go back to my create, I can see that I have my title, but then when I submit, it will warn me because we need to fill all the required fields. So we're going to introduce the fields right now, and to do that we have to use the input field from Angular material. But before we do that, we need to introduce this into our module. So we import that, and we start building our own form. So I will take the default example from here. So I'll have this mat form field with a label and so on. So I go back to my form and then start introducing these fields. So start with the company name, and this is going to be example Microsoft. This is just the placeholder, and I'll have it bound to the form group to the name. And to do that, you just need to say form control name is equal to name, so that when you type your name, it will be bound to this attribute here. Same thing, we will do the same thing for the address and the contacts later. So now if I go back to my application, as you can see, my field is added, and then we can style it a little bit to make it look nicer. So we're going to introduce the other fields soon, but first we need to make this at the full width, take the full width of the screen. So I'm just going to go to my create, and then here I'll introduce some kind of separation between the buttons and the fields. and then this should take the full width. So I will put this width is equal to 100. This is a Bootstrap class. So now my company will be on the full width, or company name field will take the full width. And of course, as you can see, it's validated. So whenever you try to submit, you will see that it's validated. So it has like built-in validation within it. I'm going to introduce the other fields right now for the address, and to do that, you need to go ahead first and introduce the form group. So it's going to be form group name, since another subform, so we need to introduce that here. So we call it address, and then within that you are going to introduce your new attributes for the address. So I'm going to make it some class here, mod elevation, we'll say Z2 with P2, and then we introduce a small title here, say address H3 address. And then within that, we are going to introduce the other attributes here. So this is going to be my street number, and this will be bound to the street number under the address subform under the form. So it's going to bind to this form, address, street number. Same thing for the other attributes of the addresses. And that's it. So now I can see that my address line 2 and my state are not validated. So I'm going to work on the contact array. It's a little bit tricky. It's different from the address, so it's a little bit because you have some like a list of contacts, not only one attribute or one entry. So you have a list of contacts, so it will be a little bit tricky. Let's do it together. To do that, we will have to introduce some helper functions that will help us get the list of or a form within an index. And to do that, we'll go and introduce a new function here, and that function will be get contact forms at an index, which is of type number, and this will return a form group for me. And I will need another function to get me all the forms, form array. So this will return a form array, and we'll have to return this form dot get contacts as form array. Then we're going to use this to get at index, at controls at index. And then we're going to return that as form group. So that's it. Now we need to introduce this into our form, and to do that we just have a new div, and we have an attribute called form array name. It's called contacts. Then we have another div to represent the list of controls of that form array, ng4 let form or contact form of get form control array dot controls. And we need to introduce the index here. Let index equal to index. After that, my second div would be bound to that index, so it's going to be form group name equal to index, so that I index my forms 0, 1, 2 until the end of the forms that are introduced for the contacts. And then here we are going to introduce the contact first name, last name, or the contact attribute. It's going to be my first name, and then here is going to be first name, the attribute. Same thing for the other attributes. I'm going to continue to finish them. I'm going to skip the video to finish them. So now all our attributes of our contact attribute are added: the first name, middle name, last name, email, and phone, and they bound to the form array of the contact collection or list. And we just need to introduce some styling to make it nicer. So to check the form first, let's just go back to the form, As you can see, we have our contact starts from here. So we'll make it nicer by introducing some styling to the contact. So to do that, just heading to add some styling to this div, actually, class mat elevation z2, and with some p2. Then I'm going to say this is contact index +1, contact 1, 2, 3, and so on. I'm going to introduce some kind of space here. Just say class, or maybe a title, h3 contacts, and we'll have some margin top with mt equal to 2. So this is my address and these are my contacts. I'm going to add new contact here, maybe make the space a little bit bigger there. So I'll put P4 or P4 there and P4 here just to make it bigger. Just go back to the application. So you see that the contact and the address are all added. So I'll have to make the form a little bit smaller. So I'll introduce three fields in the same row here and 2 fields in the same row for the email and phone. Same thing for the address, street number, and street name, city, address, line 2, and state, province. So I'll have to introduce some kind of separation there. So to start with the contact, so we'll have a div of class deflex with a gap of 2 and put all the 3 together. So I'll put these 3 together and let's check them out. So you have first name, last name, middle name are all in the same row. And then I'll do the same thing for the street number, street name, address, line 2. So I'll take this, put it here, and then just close it there, take the address, line 2, put it here. Same thing for the city, state, and country. So I'll introduce the same kind of styling there. So if I check back, you can see that all my it's nicer right now, so I have company name and then street number, whatever, and so on. Now I'm going to finish the form by submitting the information to the database. And to do that, we have our service that we need to inject here, private contact service, or company service actually. And we're going to get it from company service. Now once I submit, I should be able to post that to the API using post company service dot post. Of course, the post is not there yet, so we have to introduce it. Just going to do there and introduce the post method, and it's actually going to take one parameter. So I'm going to go post or create, and the parameter is a company that I'm going to create of type company, and here it's going to return a company once I post, and then here it's going to be post return a company and introduce that company into my post method. So here is going to be post this. I'm going to post the form value, this form dot value, since it's valid, and I'm subscribing to that. It will resolve into data. Then I'm going to say maybe redirect to the list. Once it's done, to do that we need to inject the router, private router. Then this router will be used to navigate back to the list in case I successfully created the company. So companies list, that's it. In case of error, I can show it to the user. An error occurred. Let's try again. Then I console log the error. Console error, my error. That's it. I'm done to try it out right now. So I'll create company. I call it Microsoft. And let's first go back to the list to see if I have, so I only have company 1, so now I'm going to create a new company. For the street address, I will say whatever. Then street test, based on address line 2, city, let's say New York, state, New York, US. For the first name, I'll say Bill Gates. For his email, bill.gates@microsoft.com. Just for sake of testing. And phone number, we'll put whatever number. Right? Then I submit, make sure that the console is open to see if there are errors. I get an error, and it says company's API bad request. So let's check the error, and the error clearly says that the contact company is a required field within the contact list. So each contact have a company, and that company is required. And to solve this, I just head over to the API contact module, and I can have it as optional. Now I'll have to restart my API and then try again. So just clear these errors and try to submit again. I still have another error. Let's check it out. I think it's due to the API is not started yet. The error this time is talking about the JSON exception, which is a possible object cycle was detected. To solve this, we need to introduce the Newtonsoft JSON into our API so that we ignore those cycles. And to do that, I'll just go and add a package, and it's called Newtonsoft JSON. So this is the one. I'm going to install it into my ASP.NET Core, which is this, either this or this. It's both would work. Or maybe I use this ASP.NET Core, which is compatible with the .NET Core version. So I'll install that. Once the installation of that library is done, we can head over to our program.cs to enable the Newtonsoft and ignore the reference loop. To do that, you just go to your add controllers, and then since that library is installed, you can add the Newtonsoft, as you can see there, and then within the option you can introduce the loop reference or reference loop handling. So options.serializer setting dot reference loop handling is equal to Newtonsoft, and you can see handling dot ignore. Now we need to restart our API and try again to add a new company. So now let's hit enter or submit to submit the information, and as you can see, my company is created along with each address, and we can always check on the database to see whether the company is added or not. So let's head to the Microsoft SQL Management Studio and then search or check, select all the companies. As you can see, we have Microsoft, and then we can check the addresses. You will see that I have introduced my new address. Same thing for the contact. I have a new contact called Bill Gates. So that's it for the create. It works well. In the next video, we are going to work on the edit, delete, and details. Thank you, and see you soon.